share your energy with me!
How's it going, everybody? K-Joy's here with the second episode of my new series, Pokévals, which is where I will be discussing just different Pokemon in the Sun and Moon metagame, whether I think they're underrated or just fan favorites, and kind of giving an analysis of different characteristics of theirs, such as typings, abilities, stats, move pool, and I will also be providing allies and counters, as well as movesets that I think really benefit the Pokemon. And when I look at all of these characteristics individually, I will be giving them a grade, and then a final grade at the end just based off of my personal opinion on how they stack up with other Pokemon in the metagame currently. This episode we're going to be focusing on Primarina, the final evolution of the water starter of Generation 7. Primarina was my personal choice for a starter. I know a lot of you out there probably chose Decidueye, and I can't really blame you. Decidueye looks fantastic, but I saw those stats and I was like, ouch, I don't know what I think, but that's a topic for another episode. Anyways, let's move on to its typing. So Primarina is a water fairy type, which is absolutely incredible. If you take a look at Pokemon in the past, such as Azumarill with the water fairy typing, it just puts in so much work. Granted, it is also blessed by a great ability, but we've seen what Waterfall and Play Rough coverage can really do to Pokemon, and that can just really break teams. Let's take a look at its weaknesses, which are Electric, Grass, and Poison. Typically, grass types aren't exactly that common in the OU tier. Pretty much the most prominent ones you'll see are stuff like Tapu Bulu, Mega Venusaur, and Superior, which is borderline currently. As for poison types are kind of gaining a bit of momentum just due to the fact of overpresence of fairy types. So we have Pokemon such as Alolan Muck, Greninja's been running Gunk Shot on the Protean variant, and Mega Venusaur again. Grass and Poison is kind of a combination that Primarina can kind of struggle with, but it does have a move to help it with coverage there, as well as its high special attack really helping to back it up. And then electric types, which are very, very common right now just with the presence of Magnezone, Tapu Koko, and some other Zapdos, typically a Defogger or bulky Pokemon that can also throw out some electric moves. As for resistances, you resist Fire, Dark, Fighting, Water, Ice, and Bug. A couple of these are actually great that you resist them, such as Water and Fighting specifically, which are two very common types. It allows you to take on both of Keldeo's stabs, which Keldeo is actually, I believe, UU right now, which is I understand, which it's the increased presence of Toxapex and Tapu Fini, but it's still crazy. Having these two resistances is incredible. You also resist both of Greninja's main stabs coming from the Battle Bond choice specs of Dark Pulse and Hydro Pump. And it's with just such good offensive typings in Water and Fighting, and being able to switch in and resist them is fantastic. As for Pokemon that you're going to do extremely well against with Primarina, you have to look at Rock, Ground, Dragon, Fire, Dark, and Fighting type. This is just with the combination of typically moves like Hydro Pump and Moonblast that are just able to hit them really hard. It's fantastic coverage, and any Pokemon that you do struggle with, you have other moves in your inventory that take care of them. Dragon, Fighting are two of the and Ground are two of the standouts right here. Just being able to pummel them. And as for immunities, you're actually immune to Dragon, so they're going to have to think twice about quicking that move, whether it's like a Dragon Claw or like a Draco Meteor as you bring in your Primarina potentially. And there's just a bit of a mind game there too. It's kind of like why a decreased presence with like Pokemon with Outrage, just because, you know, they have a Fairy type, you lock yourself in the Outrage, they bring in their Fairy type as you're stuck into it, do nothing, and they get a kill. So overall for the grade in terms of typing, I would have to give it an A just because we've seen how well it's done with Azumarill, and it's still incredibly strong to this day. You have very limited weaknesses. You hit some of the most common offensive types extremely hard with your stab for super effective damage, and you resist a lot of hits as well. You can take in Primarina is not a pushover, so you can come in on some of the weaker attacks, especially if it's something like just a Scald from kind of like a bulky water type or stuff like that, and then punish it extremely hard. So moving on to abilities, Primarina has two abilities. I believe one of them is Unreleased, which is Liquid Voice, but his main ability is Torrent, which is water moves do 1.5 damage when max HP is 1/3 or less. I find Torrent and all of the other kind of like Overgrow and such to be very unreliable in terms of abilities. They're not standout. They're definitely not top of the class. It is nice to have the 1.5 damage boost, but typically the trying to put yourself into that range is kind of difficult, especially with a slow Pokemon with Primarina. As you know, most of the Alolan Pokemon are extremely slow, but I just find it very unreliable. And as for Liquid Voice, when it does eventually come out, it doesn't really help. Primarina does get Hyper Voice, and it would allow it to give it a base 90 water move, but Hydro Pump is already hitting harder, and it doesn't get kind of like a Pixelate boost or an Aerialate boost. So I don't really see much of a point in using Hyper Voice. Maybe in doubles, potentially. I could see that being helpful, especially with something like Sparkling Aria, where you can heal a burn off of your friend or something like that. But I don't really see that much of a point except for getting past sub. So overall, I had to give abilities just a C grade. And you know, Torrent is nothing horrible, but it's nothing amazing standout either. It's nothing like Protean or like what we saw last time with Disguise. So I thought just a C grade was being fair, just to put it kind of in the middle of the class right there. Taking a look at its stats, Primarina has a decent stat distribution when it really comes down to it. We have base 80 HP, which is pretty solid. Nice natural bulk there. Attack for 74. You don't really care about your attack stat that much for Primarina. It's pretty much useless. There's a couple moves I guess you could abuse, like Aqua Jet if you really want a priority, but I don't really see much of a choice, much of a use there rather. As for defense, it's also sitting at 74, not too amazing right there. With the base 80 HP, it is, again, pretty solid natural bulk. As for special attack, your highest stat with 126. This is the highest special attack stat out of any starter we have ever been given, and it is incredible. Enough to rival the likes of Pokemon such as Keldeo or Hydreigon. Especially with Hydro Pump and Moonblast, just Pokemon will be annihilated. This is one of the best things Primarina could have possibly gotten, and here it is right there. As for its next stat, for special defense, you have 116, which is very, very good with the HP being 80. It's no Goodra, it's no 150, but again, we have to fit this as a starter, and the distribution is not that of a pseudo Pokemon. Therefore, 116 for natural Spadef is really, really solid. We'll definitely take that. Allows you to take some hits and could work potentially well with Assault Vest if you wanted to do that too, coupled with your amazing special attack. As for the last stat, you have just a very, very mediocre base 60 speed. Again, all the Pokemon in Alola seem to be typically slow, except for maybe the likes of Minior or like Pheromosa or a couple other Pokemon. And this kind of works against Primarina in the fact that it's a slower Pokemon that's just going to get off a really, really strong hit. And while there's nothing bad about that, it's going to get whittled down very fast. It's the problem if you're switching in the Stealth Rocks, you might be switching in just to try and like take a hit and then get off a Hydro Pump or a Moonblast. It's going to get whittled down very fast. So that's why Pokemon with maybe U-turn or Volt Switch can complement it well. Get off a slow U-turn so they take the hit beforehand and then you get in your Primarina. But you still have to be very careful because you're not really going to be outspeeding anything. Base stat total is 530, typical of what you would see from a starter. And it's a pretty solid amount when you put it into perspective. If you look at pseudo-legendaries, they usually sit around the 600 benchmark, which is very, very good. There are even some legendaries that are around there too, so 530 is not bad at all. As for its grade, I'm going to have to give it a B. The special attack and the special defense and the base 80 HP are really, really help to promote Primarina and just make it a very solid Pokemon and honestly a huge threat. Although the 74 in attack seems, a bit too high and probably could have gone somewhere else, maybe into that defense stat, which is a bit lacking. And the base 60 speed really is the thing that brings down Primarina from making it incredible. And I know Azumarill, I think, had 55 base speed, but the problem with making the comparison between the two is that Azumarill had access to Aqua Jet, and just, in my opinion, being able to hit on kind of like a physical side with stuff like, knock off to get rid of an item and then being able to Aqua Jet or stuff like that, as well as having huge power, is just enough to kind of make up for that speed deficit. But I think B is definitely not bad at all. It's, I would say above average, and you're able to hit these Pokemon, again, with your very, very high special attack. So, hey, you make use of it. Taking a look at its move pool, let's break it down individually. Offensive, we have Hydro Pump, Ice Beam, Moonblast, Psychic, Shadow Ball, Scald, Hidden Power Fire, and Energy Ball. Now, these are the moves that I believe are the most standout in terms of offensive capability. I'm sure there are a couple maybe like other hidden powers that could be of use. Taking a look at this, Hydro Pump and Moonblast are probably going to be your two main forms of just hitting stuff, hurting them out. Just incredibly powerful. As for Ice Beam, you could run Ice Beam to hit stuff maybe like Landorus or Garchomp, but really Moonblast and Hydro Pump already do that job well enough, so I guess you could run Ice Beam maybe for something like Tangrowth or Tapu Bulu if you really wanted to, but already Moonblast is doing such an incredible amount to them that Ice Beam isn't typically necessary unless you want like maybe a for sure KO on some sort of Pokemon. Psychic is typically going to be your move of coverage because it allows you to hit those pesky poison types as well as grass and poison combinations you'll see, such as Amoonguss, Mega Venusaur, Tentacruel, stuff like that. And coming off of something like a spec set, it's going to be doing enough to 2-hit KO, potentially after rocks, putting them just in range of death or stuff like that, or other hazards. So you definitely want Psychic on your set. As for Shadow Ball, I don't really see too much of a use for Shadow Ball. There's not really any Pokemon that I could think, wow, yeah, Shadow Ball, I really need it for that Pokemon. Because if you take a look at Metagross, Hydro Pump is already doing more than Shadow Ball will probably be doing, I believe. Yeah, 80. I think it does like 5 more base power. So regardless, you probably just want to do that. Shadow Ball, for something like Latios, you already have Moonblast. So I don't really see that much of a use for it, but if you want to put it on there, hey, you do that. Scald is just, think of a water type, think of Scald. You put those two together. Scald is just incredible for maybe a bulkier set just to get off burns. That way you're taking less damage on the physical side. Scald is, there's a reason why people debated Scald was the best move in the game, that or knockoff. And, I would love to hear how those debates are going actually right now in early Sun and Moon. But yeah, I see no reason why, throwing Scald on there would be a bad idea at all. Hidden Power Fire, though, allows you to hit Pokemon such as Ferrothorn and Scizor. Namely Ferrothorn, because if you take a look at maybe your 3 moves previously that you would have on the set, Hydro Pump, Moonblast, and Psychic, Ferrothorn's able to take every single one of those resisted. But if you go for Hidden Power Fire, it does enough damage to put its, after Stealth Rocks, I don't think you'll get a kill, but typically when I was running Hidden Power Fire, I was putting it down to about 15% left at full. So I was doing about 85%, which is definitely very good damage. And for all I know, that could have been like a especially defensive infested one. I think I looked at some calcs and physically defensive Ferrothorn, you had a chance to kill with the Hidden Power Fire. But regardless, after maybe it takes some hazards damage or stuff like that, it's you're gonna scare it out after it takes a Hidden Power Fire, and maybe some people aren't even expecting it. As for Energy Ball is again a move that I don't really know why you would run it, like what you would exactly want to hit. Something maybe like a water absorb like Seismitoad or Quagsire, but for that you already have Moonblast, which is hitting incredibly hard. And I'm not sure really if Energy Ball warrants taking one of those spots in order to hit specifically those Pokemon, but I mean, we could see. Again, Primarina right now is currently in the UU tier, so it's going to be dealing with different Pokemon just in those different levels, but you could use it in OU. It definitely has some uses up there. I'll be kind of discussing Pokemon in both of those tiers and just how it stacks up against them. As for support, we have Toxic, Parasong, Reflect, Light Screen, Substitute, Encore, and Misty Terrain. Toxic is nice to couple with the Scald in case there's a Pokemon that you would want to Toxic instead you would want to Burn. So it primarily used for those bulkier sets. Parasong is always just a cool move for always to see kind of just on the support set. It forces Pokemon to switch out eventually, kind of puts them on a bit of a timer. Reflect, Light Screen, if you wanted to do some kind of like screen stacking Primarina, I guess just to lead with Light Clay. I feel like there would probably definitely be other Pokemon that would do the job a bit better, just for the simple fact that Primarina is very slow, and a lot of the leads you'll see, maybe if it's like a Landorus or a Mamoswine, will typically outpace your Primarina. As for Substitute, I could see Substitute probably being the most helpful of the support moves, just in case you want to sub up and then potentially use the setup move over there, work up, or if you just want to, make sure you can take a hit and then go for stuff with like Hydro Pump or Moonblast behind your sub. Encore, the reason why Encore is actually on there is because just maybe a bit of a creative Z move you could possibly use. I have not personally tested this one, but I tested something close to it, is Z Encore, which actually raises your speed +1 after you do it. I believe that's actually how that works. I might be thinking of Z Endure. But yeah, so it's just like, I don't know, it just exists. As for these support moves, I don't know. I see Primarina more as a Pokemon that will kind of be, it'll be more of an offensive Pokemon, just hitting really, really hard. But if there were a support set that I could see Primarina running more, it would be something along the lines with like Sub-Toxic Scald, and just something like that. Moonblast is maybe your last move. And a Misty Terrain I just put there because it is actually one of the few Pokemon that does have access to Misty Terrain in case maybe you weren't running a Tapu Fini and really wanted to weaken those Dragon-type moves or prevent status, which is kind of cool. As for setup moves, Primarina is very limited actually. It only has Work Up, which is kind of a problem. If Primarina had Calm Mind, that would be a million times better, but it only does have Work Up, which raises both of your attack stats +1. I can't think of a single Pokemon I've ever seen use Work Up really to success in kind of maybe the OU or UU tier. But, if you really want to not lock yourself into a choice set, but you really want the boost for your Moonblast and your Hydro Pump, I guess you could run Work Up with some sort of like subset with Hydro Pump and Moonblast. As for Z moves, we have Twinkle Tackle and Oceanic Operetta. These two are pretty dang cool. Oceanic Operetta, especially because it's a bloody Spirit Bomb. This Pokemon, this like Siren Mermaid thing, drops a giant water Spirit Bomb on your opponent. It's a special water move, incredibly strong. It's just gonna nuke everything. So you just have to run the Primarium Z, or whatever the name of it exactly is. But the only thing holding this back is that you have to run Sparkling Aria with that. You cannot use it with Hydro Pump, otherwise, you had to use Waterium Z for the boost on that. That's really the only thing that's holding it back. But if you want to sacrifice a move slot in order to run that, then, you're going to get a nuke on a Pokemon. You're going to drop that Spirit Bomb. If we've seen Dragon Ball Z, the Spirit Bomb doesn't work that many times, but hell, it nukes them when it hits them. As for Twinkle Tackle, just a really strong Z move and the Fairy type. Of course, Fairy types are fantastic right now, so being able to nuke something with that, even maybe like a Steel type, bringing that in, it's not going to want to take a Hydro Pump afterwards, just stuff like that. So, for its grade in move pool, I was kind of debating whether I'd give this a B or a B+, and I went for B+, just because the combination of Hydro Pump, Moonblast, and Psychic is so phenomenal that it kind of just makes up for the rest of it. Its support move pool is pretty poor, but I think that's mainly because Primarina is generally centered on being an offensive Pokemon. If it had Calm Mind, it would have been so much better, or Nasty Plot, or something along those lines. Work Up as your only setup move is very, very unreliable, but its offensive move pool is just so strong that I think it's able to carry the rest of this Pokemon up. Although, if it did have it did have a stronger support move pool and Calm Mind or stuff of the sort, it would definitely be higher. So, moving on to some good allies and just counters for this Pokemon in the Friends and Foes section. I've split this up actually into OU and UU because Primarina is technically a UU Pokemon, but if you wanted to take it to OU, here's some Pokemon that could help it out. So, starting off with some friends, in OU we have Mega Charizard X, Jirachi, and Landorus. Now, with Jirachi and Landorus, both of these Pokemon have access to U-Turn, which is great. You're able to kind of get off that, because you're not really running that much speed on typically like especially defensive Jirachi or a bulky Landorus. You're able to get kind of a slower pivot, at least on those two, out into your Primarina so you can nuke something with Hydro Pump and Moonblast. I know I keep saying nuke a lot, but it really destroys the Pokemon that it hits. As for Charizard, it just allows you to maybe deal with some of the Steel types that could kind of give you problems. Let's say Hydro Pump isn't really going to be able to put in the work and they're able to kind of hit you or something like that. Then, well, you have Charizard there to help you out in the back. As well as Primarina actually helps Charizard X in the sense that if there's a Dragon-type move that's scaring it, well, you have Primarina there to switch into, which is immune to. Although both of those Pokemon are going to deal with, kind of like Earthquake spam or something like that, which is also the thing that landers can help with. Get off the Intimidate is ground immunity, and then you can U-turn out, such as that. As for UU tier, we have Magneton, Latias, and Gliscor. Now, Magneton plays into the role again of being a good pivoter with Volt Switch. It's able to take electric type moves for Primarina. It's able to take the poison type moves for Primarina and grass type moves as well. It takes all of its resistances and able to Volt Switch out and everything like that. Scare out some of the Pokemon that might worry it a bit. Take on, and it's able to trap some of the steel types that could give it a bit of a problem as well. Yeah, just very, very good for pivoting in that sense. As for Latias, Latias provides you with a ground immunity, and in the same way that Charizard X works, Primarina is able to take the Dragon type moves very well, and Latias is able to resist. Well, it doesn't take it well; it just immunes it. It's immune to it. And then you have Latias is able to take the Grass type moves for Primarina as well, and is able to get Healing Wish as well, so you can bring back your Primarina potentially to hit something even harder later. And then our final Pokemon here is Gliscor. Gliscor, again, another Pokemon with a ground immunity. It's not going to worry about poison types that much because it has Poison Heal. You know, it kind of wants to get poisoned so it can get a bit of its health back. Primarina is able to take the Water and Ice type moves for Gliscor. And overall, it's just kind of able to, like, Toxic something, stall it out, that might give Primarina a bit of an issue. And then you bring in Primarina once that Pokemon has been killed, and you just kind of go ham there. You can also run kind of like the Swords Dance set with Gliscor in order to take on some Pokemon, which we will actually see down low. As for OU, though, in terms of Pokemon that are going to give it problems, we have Mega Venusaur, Ferrothorn, and Toxapex. Mega Venusaur is able to take both of the Water and Fairy Stabs incredibly, but you do have Psychic in the back, which is a guaranteed 2-hit KO off of the Spec set. And you can speed creep a bit so that you will be able to outspeed Mega Venusaur. And it looks like with about 180 in your speed EVs, even with a modest nature, you're able to beat Mega Venusaur with, you're able to outspeed min-speed Mega Venusaur. Hit it with 2 Psychics, that thing's going to drop. As for the Ferrothorn, as I said earlier, Hidden Power Fire was typically bringing it down to about 15%, but that could have been a special defensive variant. Physical defensive variants typically, it has a very, I think, a smaller chance to OHKO, but it's still going to be doing enough damage that it's not going to be able to do anything back, especially if you catch it on a switch-in, which is a really good feeling. Lastly is Toxapex, which is kind of the same problem with Venusaur. Water and Fairy are both resisted, but you do have Psychic, will be a 2-hit KO. Spec Psychic is just able to blow these Pokemon back to give it problems, which is why Psychic is just such a good complement for Primarina. As for the UU tier, we have Amoonguss. Amoonguss is the same exact deal with Mega Venusaur, just slightly less bulky. Higher HP stats, sure, but defenses are typically lower. It's kind of the same deal, you know, you're just going to hit with Psychic. It should be a 2-hit KO off of a Spec set. Then we have Volcanion. Volcanion is a Pokemon that I feel actually A, will probably move up to OU, and B, has Water Absorb, which will take your Hydro Pumps, and the Fire typing, which takes your Moonblast. But when I was running some calcs, actually, your Moonblast and Psychic were still doing a incredible amount to Volcanion. The kind of speedy Spec set and stuff like that, all-out attacker. And Psychic was a 2-hit KO. And Volcanion, the only way it's really going to hit you back that hard if it's like Sludge Bomb, and that's really the only one. So you still do have the potential to 2-hit KO it with Psychic. If Rocks are up, I think Moonblast might even be able to do the job as well. Just Primarina is so strong, but it's still something to think about. You know, you have to be very conscious of how you use your Hydro Pumps. You want to heal it up, bring it in, and then it's able to get off a Sludge Bomb and kill you. The last Pokemon here is Tentacruel. Same deal. Water Fairy don't do the job. Use Psychic. It will be a 2-hit KO. It's going to take care of it. So you might be thinking that a lot of these Pokemon, why do you have these in the counter section? But it's because Water Fairy is just so good with Psychic helping it out. Take a look at Azumarill. Is that you have stuff like Waterfall, Play Rough, which hits mostly everything except for these Pokemon. Like Mega Venusaur was able to take on Azumarill because, well, Azumarill didn't really have any way to hit it. Sure, I guess it had like Knockoff or Ice Punch, but that's not doing that much. But for Ferrothorn, you had Superpower to deal with it. But now you have Psychic to deal with these Pokemon that, like, you have a Psychic type move to deal with these Pokemon that Azumarill couldn't. If Azumarill had Zen Headbutt, that could have been a whole nother story, but it doesn't. So, just Water Fairy coming in the clutch, Psychic really helping it out. But these are again the Pokemon that I would watch out for, in case they switch in, try to take a hit, and then they can hit you back just with their poison stab. Typically, I mean, every single one of these, except for Ferrothorn, has the ability to run some sort of poison move, or just be, if you lock yourself into a specific specs move, they're able to just come in, heal up or whatever, do whatever they please. So we're going to move on to the ends and conclusion, but first we're going to watch just a replay I had showcasing a Primarina set with the choice specs, and just how it performed. It was actually against a Hail team, which is pretty cool. You don't really see Hail that much, and I thought it was not only a good way to show what Primarina can do, but also to show off Hail teams as well, which, I want to get to at some point. But it was a cool match. I wanted to try another set, which I'll talk about in a bit, but I didn't have as much success. But anyways, I'll see you in a bit. Alright, so here I am with the replay I have using this Choice Specs Primarina team with a Spadef Jirachi, Dragonite Jolly Charizard X, Scarf Landorus, Max Defense Rotom, and Standard Tapu Fini with a tiny bit of speed in order to taunt some leads. This team isn't too good. It has kind of a problem dealing with Pokemon such as Choice Specs Magnezone, even though I do have an electric immunity, just because Jirachi can't really touch it even though it's Spadef, and Charizard X really isn't going to be taking the Thunderbolts that well. But it's kind of a fun team. I like playing around with it, and it's always fun using Primarina to just destroy some Pokemon. And my opponent is using a Hail team, which is super cool. Hail got some really nice buffs this generation, including Slush Rush, Alolan Ninetales is a good Hail starter, and Aurora Veil along with it, which is pretty much Light Screen and Reflect, but only of use when the Hail is up, so that's pretty cool. And, just showing off a lot of cool Pokemon here with Weavile, Charizard, Lowland Sandslash, and the new and improved Beartic. But let's go ahead and jump into the replay. So I'm going to lead off with my Rotom Wash, anticipating the Mamoswine that want to come out and just get up its rocks, as I go for the Will-O-Wisp, just so I can potentially break a Focus Sash or burn one of the physical attackers that might have wanted to come in. I'm going to go for Hydro Pump here to try and finish off the Mamoswine as they go into their Alolan Ninetales, so I'm able to get off some nice damage on that. As then I decide to go into my Tapu Fini to try and get the Defog off to get rid of these rocks, but they actually put up the Aurora Veil, which is great because I can get rid of that as well with the rocks. That definitely could have caused some problems potentially. So they're going to go into their Charizard right here, and then they are going to go for the Mega Evolution on my switch into the Landorus. Now I anticipated this to be Charizard X actually, which probably wasn't a good call considering that I have 4 physical ice attackers, and I'm just going to get blown back by Solar Beam. I really don't have a switch into this Pokemon. And it's just cool seeing dual weather with Hail, because you typically see Charizard with T-Tar for dual weather with Sand. So they're going to go for the Stuff Rocks on my switch out into Rotom. I didn't want to take any extra damage with Ice Shard or anything like that, and I'm going to miss the Hydro Pump, which is kind of annoying because my Tapu Fini is going to come in just to get rid of rocks, but I'm also just going to get whittled by the Earthquake. As you can see, Icicle Crash really isn't doing that much to Tapu Fini, but Earthquake's going to be doing kind of a decent chunk despite the burn, and just slowly whittling me down. I am going to be able to get rid of the rocks, but Tapu Fini's really not going to be able to take on some of the Pokemon that it would have been able to before. I'm just going to keep defogging. I really don't want these rocks to go up. And they're going to go for one last Earthquake as I finish them off here with the Scald. So pretty much when Charizard comes in, it just really gets to put in work against my team. As it gets to come up here, set up the Sun. I'm going to switch out into my Charizard here, thinking maybe I could take a Fire Blast, and I do take it, but not very well at all, just 60%, so I hope with the Mega Evolution and the 4x Resist I could take it, and I'm able to. They do win the Speed tie. I did the damage, and it looks like they were timid nature, and I'm going to win the Speed tie here with the Roost, and they go for the Focus Blast. So at this point, it was either like sack the Charizard off, or maybe like hope I win a Speed tie, or hope they miss, but they actually go into a Alolan Ninetales, which is nice because I get to save my Charizard just in case. Now I'm going to bring in my Jirachi because Jirachi can pretty much wall Alolan Ninetales. Ice and Fairy aren't going to do much to it at all, and Hidden Power Fire does not do much at all either. I'm going to get up my rocks as they bring in their Charizard. Again, I don't have a switch into Mega Charizard Y, so I'm just going to have to sack off my Tapu Fini at this point, and it's going to drop to 2 Fire Blast. Now I'm going to bring out my Landorus because I am Choice Scarf, and at this point I can just freely Quick Stone as they do not have a switch in at all. The only Pokemon that get his neutrally is actually a Alolan Sandslash, which isn't going to take it very well at all. They're going to bring out their Alolan Ninetales, and unfortunately I do miss the Stone Edge here as they as they go for Blizzard and get rid of me, but I am able to bring in my Jirachi pretty freely afterwards. They go for Aurora Veil. It's not going to matter here. Still 4 times weak to steel. It's definitely going to drop. And at this point, it's just kind of putting it into position for Primarina to kind of clean up. I didn't really want to risk switching in anything on Weavile in case they got a little out of hand, so I just decided to stack Jirachi at that point. It wasn't going to do much against the Alolan Sandslash as well. And I'm just going to go for Hidden Power Fire here, thinking maybe they could go into their Alolan Sandslash, but it's also super effective against anything. Didn't really want to miss risking Hydro Pump. And on their Beartic, I am going to go into my Rotom because I know I can take any Icicle Crash or anything like that. Decided to go for Play Rough, and as you can see, it's really not doing that much to my Rotom. As I'm going to go for the Will-O-Wisp, get the burn, and now this is going to be doing minimal damage, and I can pretty much just freely Volt Switch on out of there, and then go into my Primarina. And I'm going to go out into it and just get another cure, really, by just clicking Moonblast at this point. As you can see, Play Rough is doing 24% to Primarina. That would have been scary if it wasn't burned. That's kind of what I mean by Primarina getting whittled. Beartic definitely has a very, very high attack stat. But even as you can see, Icicle Crash there, which was resisted from Life Orb Weavile. Don't get me wrong, Weavile is strong, but that almost did about 50%. And you know, it is going to get whittled very careful, very, very slowly, or, you know, if you just keep bringing it in on these intense attacks. So you have to be careful with how you play Primarina. Typically, Primarina shouldn't, or usually won't be getting kind of like those late game kills, or just cleaning up at the end. Is more for helping other Pokemon get the late game kills, but at this position, you know, especially against like a Hail Team, Primarina was really able to shine, being able to resist the Ice-type moves. And once Charizard was out of the way, the one Pokemon that really threatened it, you know, it was just time to go in for Primarina. But yeah, so back to the items and conclusion section. Alright, so welcome back to the items and conclusion section. Taking a look at just my suggested items, we have Choice Specs, Leftovers, Primarium Z, I knew I was going to say that wrong, Assault Vest, and Life Orb. Those are typically, I'd say, the strongest items that you could run. And down below we have Waterium Z, Normalium Z, and Papaya Berry. A couple weird ones down there as we'll get to, but let's just go through them individually. So Choice Specs, I think, is the best item that you can have for Primarina. It just abuses the 126 special attack. It's able to hit everything extremely hard, as we saw with the Friends and Foes section. You're able to cover everything with your typing and coverage moves on the side. Leftovers is really nice for a bulkier Primarina set, as you can see actually here on the right with the Leftovers, Scald, Toxic Encore, and Substitute. And with 252 and 248 in HP, 252, just limits, you know, Stealth Rock damage with that HP investment. And yeah, it's just built to be a bulkier Pokemon with fantastic typing. Take a look at something like Tapu Fini, really good typing. Maybe not the defensive capabilities, but still really good typing with able to spam Scald freely without with the actual chance to get a burn unless somebody else gets rid of your terrain. Primarium Z is to use your Spirit Bomb, your Oceanic Operetta, just destroy something, bomb them, they're gone. Assault Vest is to take advantage of Primarina's pretty solid special attack and special defense stat, as well as the special attack stat. Something very similar to kind of Gujo, where you're going to do that. Take the hits. You'll typically want to go investment into your HP stat and special attack stat, mainly with a tiny bit of speed creep depending on what you want to beat. Makes it very bulky on that side, able to switch in more to Pokemon and not get chipped away as much. Life Orb is kind of the lowest of all these items, I would say, just because you're already getting chipped away enough. Choice Specs is already great if you want to get off damage. Life Orb is just kind of there if you want to be able to switch up your move with getting a tiny bit more damage, but I don't really know what Life Orb helps to secure on KOs that, you know, Choice Specs or just running Assault Vest wouldn't already do. As for the lower moves, we have Waterium Z. Now, Waterium Z would be, you know, if you want to get a really strong Hydro Pump off, or the set that I was actually thinking about that I did not include in the support moves, but Z Rain Dance actually gives you a speed boost. And so I believe I ran Timid Nature of 224 or 228 speed EVs just with the speed boost, and I was able to outpace a lot of Pokemon. I believe up to 110 base speed potentially, and, you know, hit him with Hydro Pump and Moonblast, and it was a really fun set. It was just a lot of fun. you can actually see it there in the center move slot. So actually, oh yeah, it is 228. I don't even know what I'm saying. Just 28 in HP just to give it the max. It just uses leftovers to provide a little more bulk. It's a really fun set. I don't think it's that practical. I was able to get a couple kills off of it. I was able to do some stuff. It caught some people off guard, but Primarina isn't really a sweeper. It's more or less just hit something, weaken it for the rest of your team to kind of come in. And so this is kind of putting it more into a Moonblast slot and putting it more into a sweeper slot, which isn't really carved out for it. But Rain Dance Hydro Pump, it kind of destroys stuff, and it's pretty much the equivalent of a Specs Hydro Pump. So hey, if you want to test it out, go ahead, and if you have success, let me know, because I was having fun with it, but not getting amazing results. And then finally for Pitaya Berry is just something to abuse with Torrent. Let's say you drop down into that range of 1/3, you'll get your Pitaya Berry, so you'll get that 50% boost, and you'll also get the Torrent 50% boost as well. I guess you could run something like Select to get a similar result of the Water EMZ Rain Dance. So you can run Select or Pitaya, I guess, if you wanted to. It's very gimmicky. Honestly, I haven't tried it out, but it just doesn't seem like it would have that much of a result. But again, much like the Rain Dance set, if you have success with it, let me know, because I would love to see that. And as I said with the different sets here, Choice Specs is my recommended set. Rain Dance is a very just fun set, and then Primarina does have the ability to run a bulky leftover set. So the final grade that I would like to give to Primarina is a B. I think that Water Fairy is just incredible typing. It has the move pool it needs to cover everything that it wants to hit, and it's able to hit stuff super hard and just nuke it to help other Pokemon sweep in the late game. The problems that Primarina does suffer from are relatively low speed, which is actually probably one of its biggest problems, and also the ability not to have really solid setup and good abilities that complement it as well. Torrent, it just doesn't really get the job done. It's not standout. It's nothing amazing that really boosts it to the next level, like huge power on Azumarill. And Work Up doesn't get the job done. Calm Mind or Nasty Plot would be a million times better. But B isn't a bad grade at all. It's still able to do well, and I think it does pretty well down in UU as well. I mean, it would have to if its usage put it in that tier. So definitely check out Primarina, give it a shot, have fun with it. I think it's a very fun Pokemon. So that's going to be it for this episode, guys. If you enjoyed this, then, subscribe if you want, leave a like, leave a comment down below of what Pokemon you want to see me cover, or what you thought, maybe if you had success with the sets I was discussing, or if you're like, hey, K George, you should try this out. I was like, oh, okay, that's a good idea. Yeah, so I want to promote discussion and stuff like that in the comments, and also just like I want to get support on this series, and just have a lot to talk about with people. So yeah, if you enjoyed this episode, go ahead, and I will see you guys for the next episode. Peace out.